there's a lot of remote job listings. If you go on LinkedIn, there is like a section that says job type, and you can choose between remote, hybrid, and on-site. Hybrid is just like an in-between thing where you have to show up to the office maybe 2 times, 3 times, and then you work from home the remaining days. It's pretty tricky for the US. They do have the J1. I think they have an internship visa as well, or what you can do is you can work in summer camps. They have a program for that as well, but they don't really have a working holiday visa like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, for instance, where you can just arrive and work in any job you want. They don't have that in the US. So you kind of need to go with an agency and more of a planned approach. You cannot just show up and then see how it goes.
So let's talk about travel hacks. Which tips can you share with us? Let's say somebody watching us who has never got started with this, who maybe would like to become a digital nomad, or just wants to travel, visit different places from the beginning of the process, choosing a place, what to do, what not to do, how to pack, and what have you.
I think rule number 1, always have enough money for the return ticket home. That is the most important. Like, always make sure if you don't like it, you have the chance to go home at any time, because then nothing can really happen, right? You can go and explore. I think it's a lot of trial and error with traveling. Like, especially if you've never really traveled, you don't really know what you like yet.
So basically plan the length of your stay and get a round trip.
Yeah, you could do that, definitely. You can do anything, right? Like, for me, it's just like I need to have enough money in my bank account to buy a ticket home at any time. I don't often buy round trip tickets. I usually travel one way. But I make sure, like, no matter what happens, I have enough money. Or, like, I should say, when I was younger, I did that. Now I have, like, no problems with that at all. But, especially the younger people, if they are backpacking and they want to save a lot of money, I'd say, like, that would be the hard limit where you can't get below. You need the money for a ticket home if something happens, if you don't like it. But other than that, I'd say try it out. Like, very easy countries to backpack in are basically any country in Asia. Thailand, Indonesia, super easy and like organized to travel in because they're so used to tourists. So there's like certain systems that are really easy to understand. There will always be somebody nearby that speaks your language as well. So it's a lot easier to get into it in countries like that. How I did it when I first started, I did an au pair here with the J1 visa in America. And for me, that was the best option, because I had never been away from home. I didn't speak English properly. So it was the safest way for me to like go live in a different country and experience it, because all I had to do was board the plane. Somebody picked me up at the airport. I already had a job secured. I had a home secured. Food basically came with the agreement as well. So there wasn't really that much to figure out by myself in terms of like means of life. It was still an adjustment, right, with the language and the culture as well. But I didn't really have all the other struggles in addition to that. So for me, that was the easiest way to start.
How has your experience with visas been?
I've definitely had a few of those. I've burned through pretty much all of them now that I'm like 31. Like, I don't have any more options because I already used the Canadian one. So I've had the J1 visa for America. That is basically tied to an agency. So you can only be an au pair on it. I think there's other options, actually. Sorry, I don't want to say anything wrong. But if you go as an au pair, you're tied to the agency. So you cannot just like up and leave, right? So it gives you more stability, but maybe a little bit less freedom in case you're not.
Isn't there room for another visa, like a work permit, a permanent residence?
For the US, it's pretty tricky. It's pretty tricky for the US. They do have the J1. I think they have an internship visa as well. Or what you can do is you can work in summer camps. They have a program for that as well. But they don't really have a working holiday visa like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, for instance, where you can just arrive and work in any job you want. They don't have that in the US. So you kind of need to go with an agency and more of a planned approach. You cannot just show up and then see how it goes. That's just like that's not how it works in the US, right?
Right.
But then, for example, if you go to Australia or New Zealand or Canada, you can do exactly that. Their working holiday visa is basically an open ticket to do whatever you want in the country. You need proof that you have enough money to sustain yourself. But other than that, there's not that many rules and limitations. You can work any job in any state. Like there's limitations to the length of how long you can work. But other than that, like it's a little bit more free. You can choose a little bit more. But then at the same time, you have to figure it out yourself. Right. So I would always say if it's your first time and you're a little bit scared, it might make sense to pair or have a little bit more of a plan. If you feel a little bit more confident or a little bit more brave for that matter, then I'd say like a working holiday visa is perfect and you can just go and figure it out along the way.
What would be your next destination?
My next destination will be Germany. Very funny.
Going back home.
So I haven't seen my family since earlier this year in January, and I'm so close right now, so it makes sense to like swing by and visit them. So I'll be doing that in September, but then other than that, it's a little bit of an open book. I might stick around in Europe until it gets too cold for me, like maybe end of October, and then I'll definitely go somewhere warm again. Right now I'm thinking maybe South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Do you think what you're doing, working as a digital nomad, is compatible with many career choices?
I think you can be a digital nomad with almost anything nowadays because our life is so much like on the technology side. It's so much online. Everything that happens can be online. So I think almost all jobs, there is obviously certain jobs that aren't possible, like a doctor, for instance. You cannot do that as a digital nomad. You can do certain programs where you like work abroad. But I think with most jobs...
I've heard about a guy, he's a dentist and he does that. I wouldn't, refer to him as a digital nomad, but then he travels across different states in the United States as a dentist.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, or travel nurses is what they have a lot in the US as well, where you're just like placed in different hospitals, or dentists probably placed in different like dental facilities. And I like that a lot as well. In terms of like a digital nomad job, I think almost any skill somebody has can be transferred into like a digital role nowadays.
So typically you would be on your own or at least a freelancer.
I don't think you have to be. You can obviously choose to work remotely for a company. There's a lot of remote job listings. If you go on LinkedIn, there is like a section that says job type, and you can choose between remote, hybrid, and on-site. Hybrid is just like an in-between thing where you have to show up to the office maybe 2 times, 3 times, and then you work from home the remaining days. So there is options. Like if you go on LinkedIn, you can find remote work. So you can have that stability where somebody tells you exactly those are the tasks you need to do, like you need to work those hours. So for people that like would want to have like a little bit more stability, it's definitely possible to like choose a remote job as well.
It was a pleasure having you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Mike. It was good being here.